Don't worry.
This isn't a lecture. There's no quiz at the end. No pressure to take notes. Just you, me, and a quiet question that's been following humans for thousands of years. You've had a long day. Maybe your thoughts are still spinning a little. Maybe your body's tired, but your mind, not quite ready to rest. That's okay. Tonight, we're not chasing productivity. We're not fixing anything. We're just going to explore something strange. Something ancient. Something you've experienced countless times, and yet, probably never fully understood. What happens in your mind when you fall asleep? What stories does your brain tell, when you're not even there to direct them? Let's take a slow, dreamy walk into the unknown. Let's talk about dreams. So let's try to answer the obvious first. What is a dream? It sounds simple, doesn't it? But the moment you try to explain it, you realize, it's like trying to describe wind with your hands. Dreams are personal, ephemeral, sometimes powerful, sometimes completely ridiculous. At their core, dreams are collections of thoughts, images, emotions, and sensations that occur while we sleep. You're not consciously in control, and yet your mind is creating scenes, feelings, entire worlds. It's like your brain becomes a midnight filmmaker, directing, editing, improvising, all while the rest of you is completely still. And these dreams can be short flickers, or long adventures. They can be vivid or vague. They can carry deep emotions, or just feel like nonsense you forget by breakfast. But here's what makes dreams truly strange. They don't feel imaginary when you're inside them. You know that moment. You're flying over a city made of soup cans, and there's a bear teaching kindergarten. And none of it strikes you as weird. Not even a little. You're completely convinced it's all normal. It just makes sense. That's because, in a dream, your sense of logic takes a break. Your inner critic, the part of your brain that usually says, wait, that's not right, goes quiet. And without that filter, the brain can just roll with anything. You could be underwater having dinner with Abraham Lincoln, and your dream self would be like, yep, pass the salt. It's not just that dreams are vivid. It's that your brain accepts them as truth, even when they defy physics, time, memory, or identity. Scientists have studied this. During REM sleep, the dream-rich phase, parts of the brain responsible for critical thinking and reality checks dial down. Meanwhile, emotional and sensory areas light up like a movie theater projector. That's why dreams can feel so emotionally intense, even overwhelming, but still totally absurd. It's also why we wake up thinking, wait, why did I believe that made sense? But while we sleep, our brains don't ask questions. They just keep spinning. It's as if the dreaming mind has its own logic, its own rules. And in that space, everything feels real, even when it shouldn't. Let's be honest, dreams can be absolutely hilarious. Have you ever had one of those dreams where you show up to work, only to realize you're not wearing pants, and your coworkers are all sea otters? Or you're back in high school, but you forgot your locker combination, and somehow, your math teacher is a talking banana?
Don't worry. You're not alone.
One person dreamed they were a cactus on a talk show. Another reported being chased through IKEA by a giant marshmallow. Someone else once dreamed they were in love with a vending machine. And then there are the classics. Being late for a test in a class that doesn't exist. Trying to run, but your legs feel like cement. Falling forever. Flying over cities. Or showing up to a fancy event, only to realize you're wearing your childhood pajamas. These dreams are silly. Sometimes unsettling. Often just plain weird. But they're also deeply human. They're how the brain explores fear, memory, movement, and identity, just with flying giraffes and tuxedo-wearing walruses. And even though they rarely make sense, they stick with us. Like postcards from a parallel version of ourselves. Long before we had MRI machines or sleep labs, humans still dreamed. And naturally, they started asking big questions. Why did I dream about a river overflowing? Why did I see my grandfather, even though he passed away last year? What does it mean when I fly? In ancient Mesopotamia, dreams were thought to be divine messages. Each symbol, a lion, a tree, a storm, meant something. People recorded them on clay tablets, interpreting dreams like holy codes. The Egyptians took it further. They believed dreams came from the gods, delivered to the sleeping like sacred letters. They even had professional dream interpreters. Imagine going to someone with a dream about a frog riding a chariot and paying them in grain to explain it. In Greece, philosophers joined the conversation. Aristotle wondered if dreams might come from within the body, not the gods. Maybe dreams reflected what we ate, how we felt, or even early signs of illness. But it wasn't until much later, with Freud and Jung, that the idea of the unconscious mind took center stage. Freud called dreams the royal road to the unconscious. He thought they were full of hidden desires and repressed feelings. Jung believed dreams connected us to deeper truths, through universal symbols he called archetypes. Were they right? Maybe in part. Maybe not at all. But what matters is this. For as long as we've been human, we've looked at our dreams and wondered, what are they trying to tell us? And even now, with all our science, we still don't have the full answer. But we're getting closer. Because to understand dreams, we need to understand sleep. Now that we've tiptoed through the foggy world of dreams, let's peel back the blanket a bit further and explore how the body settles into sleep and what exactly the brain is doing while we think it's resting. Let's start with something we all take for granted: falling asleep. We say it casually, like it's flipping a light switch.
I'm gonna crash now.
Time to shut down. Lights out. But the truth is, sleep is not an off switch. It's a journey, subtle, layered, and surprisingly complex. You don't just fall asleep. You transition. You descend. And your body, your brain, your senses, they all have to coordinate this strange, delicate handover from waking to sleeping. And they do it every single night, often without your permission. It begins quietly. Your eyes grow heavy. The room starts to blur at the edges. Your thoughts get looser, like the string of a balloon slowly slipping from your hand. Maybe you're thinking about a conversation earlier in the day. Then that thought somehow becomes a memory. Then that memory turns into a weird image. Then suddenly, you're half dreaming. That space between awake and asleep, that's a real, measurable brain state. It's called stage N1, and it's where sleep begins. From the outside, N1 looks like nothing. You're lying there, still, maybe blinking slowly. Maybe your fingers twitch a bit. Maybe your leg kicks out like it just remembered gravity exists. That sudden jolt? It's called a hypnic jerk. And it happens because your brain is releasing control, but your body's not quite ready to let go. Inside your head, though, everything is shifting. Brainwaves slow down from active beta and alpha frequencies into slower, more wandering theta waves. Your sensory input drops. Your muscles relax. And something else happens. Your awareness begins to detach. Not in a dramatic way. You're still kind of here. You might even deny you were falling asleep if someone nudged you. I wasn't asleep, you'd say, half defensive. And technically, you'd be sort of right. Because N1 is like standing on the shoreline. The water is lapping at your feet. You haven't waded in yet, but the ocean's calling. From here, your body has a decision to make. Keep going, or wake back up. If the room is noisy, if the lights are too bright, if you're stressed, caffeinated, uncomfortable, or checking your phone, your brain might backpedal. And you'll end up in that frustrating, restless loop. But if the conditions are right, if your body feels safe, and your mind is quieting, you begin to slide into the next stage, N2. And that's when the real magic starts. So, you've left the shoreline. You're no longer quite awake. Your awareness is dimming, like the lights in a theater just before the movie starts. And now, you begin your descent. This is where you're really slipping into unconsciousness. Your body is quieting. Your breathing becomes more rhythmic. Your body temperature drops slightly, which is why cozy blankets feel so good just about now. You're not fully dreaming yet, not quite. But your mind is letting go of the outside world. And here's something fascinating. Even though you seem deeply asleep in N2, your brain is incredibly active in a very particular way. Let's talk about sleep spindles. Sleep spindles are these short bursts of brainwave activity, like quick little zaps of electrical energy that suddenly ripple across your brain's surface. They last about half a second to 2 seconds. And we're still figuring out exactly what they do. But here's what we know so far. They seem to act like filters. Your brain still hears the world. But a sleep spindle says, nope. Not important.
Let's keep dreaming.
It's your brain's way of protecting your sleep. One study from 2012 found that people who produced more sleep spindles during N2 were better at tuning out external noise and maintaining sleep in noisy environments. It's like your brain has its own white noise defense system. Cool, right? But that's not all. N2 is also where something called K-complexes show up. Now, K-complexes aren't as cute sounding as sleep spindles. But they're just as essential. These are large, sudden spikes of brain activity, followed by deep silence, almost like your brain flinching, and then going, wait, we're okay. Back to sleep. It's thought that K-complexes help with both sleep maintenance and memory processing, which means that even though you feel out cold, your brain is listening, sorting, choosing what matters, and what can wait. And here's the thing. Most of your night, roughly 45 to 55%, is spent in this N2 stage. It's easy to overlook. It's not where the wild dreams happen. It's not the deepest sleep. It doesn't feel profound. But without it, you'd constantly wake up. Your brain wouldn't process information properly. And your sleep would feel broken. N2 is your mind's quiet workspace. No drama. Just calm, steady housekeeping. But the journey's not over. From N2, you now begin the slow, quiet slide into the deepest phase of sleep, stage N3, also known as slow-wave sleep or delta sleep. In N3, your brainwaves get big, slow, heavy, rhythmic. If you were to look at them on a monitor, they'd resemble ocean waves. Not choppy and erratic, but long, rolling pulses. Your muscles relax even further. Your blood pressure drops. Your breathing slows to its lowest point. Your body begins releasing hormones, including growth hormone in children and teenagers, which is essential for development. And for adults? Well, we don't grow taller, but our tissues heal. Our bones rebuild. Our immune system strengthens. It's like the body sends in a maintenance crew with tiny tool belts and repair kits.
Now, what about dream?
Yes, dreams can occur in N3, but they're usually not like the vivid cinematic dreams of REM sleep. These dreams are more abstract, more emotional tone than plot. Flashes of imagery, a mood, a movement. If REM dreams are like watching a movie, N3 dreams are more like feeling one, without clear characters or storyline. Some researchers think N3 dreams help us integrate emotional stress in a low stimulation state. Kind of like letting your mind air out tension in a dark, quiet room. N3 sleep is incredibly hard to wake from. Ever tried waking up a teenager before 7 a.m.? Their brain is in N3, and it does not want to come back just yet. If you are woken from this stage, you'll probably feel disoriented, groggy, maybe even grumpy. That's called sleep inertia, the brain trying to hit snooze on consciousness. It's normal. It's annoying. And it's proof that N3 is doing real heavy-duty work. You drift into N1 soft entry. You settle in N2 stabilized rest. Then you drop into N3 deep, healing sleep. And just when your body has done all that good hard work, it's the brain's turn to party. The lights come up again. Your muscles go still. Your eyes start darting. And somewhere in the background, the penguins in top hats are warming up backstage. Because next is REM. Your body is relaxed. Deep sleep has come and gone. You've been floating in the calm, dark ocean of slow-wave sleep. And then, something changes. Without you noticing, tiny sparks light up across the cortex. Your heartbeat becomes a little irregular. Your breathing gets faster, almost shallow. And if someone were to peek under your eyelids, they'd see your eyes darting back and forth, rapidly, like you're watching an invisible screen. You've just entered REM sleep. Rapid eye movement. The most mysterious, creative, and in many ways, important part of the sleep cycle. REM is weird. Your brain, which was calm and slow during deep sleep, suddenly becomes almost as active as it is when you're awake. In fact, under an EEG machine, the patterns of your brainwaves during REM are strikingly similar to those seen during full consciousness. Except, you're not conscious. Not in the way we know it. You're inside a dream. This is where most of your vivid, story-driven dreams happen. But full-on narratives, with dialogue, characters, places, even sound and color. Your brain is building worlds. On the fly. From memory, imagination, emotion, and fragments of reality. You might be walking through a version of your childhood home. Except the walls are made of snow, and your ex is baking cookies with a talking cat. And in the dream, it all makes perfect sense. So what's actually going on in your brain during REM? Here's the fascinating part. Some regions light up, while others shut down. For example, white heavy checkmark the amygdala, which processes emotion, becomes highly active. Which explains why dreams can feel so intense, so raw, so charged. White heavy checkmark the hippocampus, which deals with memory, starts pulling bits and pieces from your past. Some accurate. White heavy checkmark the occipital lobe, the part of your brain that handles vision, kicks in as well. Which is why dreams are often visual, rich in images, colors, and shifting scenes. But one part of the brain goes dark. Crossmark the prefrontal cortex, the rational logical editor of your thoughts, takes a back seat. And that, my friend, is why you can be riding a skateboard through a mall filled with flamingos and still think, this tracks. REM also comes with a strange, fascinating safeguard. That's a fancy term for temporary paralysis. Your brain literally disconnects your muscles from your motor signals, so that you don't act out your dreams. Otherwise, That dream where you're running from a dinosaur might end with you sprinting headfirst into your bedroom wall. There's a rare condition called REM sleep behavior disorder, where this mechanism fails. People with it may thrash, kick, or even leap out of bed mid-dream. It can be dangerous, not just for the dreamer, but for anyone sleeping next to them. But it's also a powerful reminder, real enough that it has to lock down your body just to keep you safe. And what's REM for, exactly? Well, the answer isn't simple, but it is beautiful. REM sleep is believed to play a key role in memory consolidation, especially emotional memories, learning, creativity. That's right, your brain does some of its best work while you're unconscious. In one experiment at the University of California, subjects were given complex puzzles, but told to take a nap first. Those who entered REM sleep were almost 40% more likely to solve the problem when they woke up. Another study showed that students who napped with REM performed better on pattern recognition tasks. Their brains were connecting dots, even in the dark. Ever heard of artists or inventors getting ideas in dreams?
Paul McCartney dreamed the melody for Yesterday.
Mary Shelley was inspired by a nightmare that eventually became Frankenstein. He claimed the structure of the periodic table came to him in a dream. REM is not just mental fluff. It's deeply cognitive. What you feel. Even who you are. It doesn't just make stories. It makes sense of you. And here's a curious twist. Your REM periods get longer the longer you sleep. The first REM cycle might last 10 to 15 minutes. The last one, the one just before you wake, could stretch to nearly an hour. That's why the most bizarre movie-like dreams often happen in the early morning. It's as if your brain saves the big productions for the end. The grand finale. So when you wake up from a dream feeling confused, inspired, or deeply moved, remember, your brain has just taken you through a kind of inner theater. You weren't just resting. You were remembering. You were rebalancing. You were rewriting things that maybe didn't make sense in waking life. Every night, while you lie peacefully in bed, your brain becomes a quiet machine, methodical, rhythmic, and surprisingly organized. Sleep isn't one long stretch of unconsciousness. It's a cycle repeated again and again, like music looping in the background. You move subtly, invisibly, through a predictable sequence: light sleep, deep sleep, dream sleep, and back again. This full loop takes about 90 minutes in most adults, and you'll go through that loop 4 to 6 times in a healthy night of sleep. It's a pattern, a rhythm, a biological dance choreographed by your brain. And each phase plays a distinct role, like different members of an orchestra. Let's walk through one of those cycles together. It begins with N1, that gentle transition from wakefulness to sleep. Then you drift into N2, where your body settles and sleep spindles start to hum. From there, you dive deeper into N3, the slow wave sleep, where your body repairs and recharges. Finally, your brain lights up with REM sleep, the dream stage, emotional, active, surreal. Then, the curtain closes. You circle back to N1 or N2, and the cycle begins again. But here's where it gets interesting. Each 90-minute cycle is different. Not all loops are created equal. Early in the night, the first 1 or 2 cycles are dominated by deep sleep, N3. Your body's priority at the start of the night is physical recovery. That's when tissues repair, muscles rebuild, and growth hormone is released. Think of it as the body's shift. The cleaning crew shows up early. But as the night goes on, things shift. REM sleep gets longer and longer with each cycle. By the 3rd or 4th cycle, REM might last 30 to 40 minutes. By the final loop, near dawn, REM can stretch close to an hour. It's like your brain saves its weirdest, most creative dreams for last. The logic is elegant. Early night is for the body, later night is for the mind. In between all these stages, the brain maintains a delicate balance. It monitors hormones like melatonin and cortisol. It tracks temperature, blood pressure, and even tiny shifts in posture. It manages the timing of each phase like a conductor keeping tempo. All while you're completely unaware, floating in the dark. This pattern is so consistent, scientists can map it, literally. Sleep labs around the world have turned these stages into wave graphs and EEGs. They look like staircases, up and down, dip into N3, rise into REM. These charts are called hypnograms, and they show exactly how your brain moves through sleep over time. And just like fingerprints, everyone's hypnogram is a little different, but the architecture holds. When things are working right, this cycle repeats smoothly. You wake up feeling refreshed, clear-headed, emotionally balanced. But when something interrupts that cycle, even a small thing, the results can be dramatic. Think about caffeine, or stress, or scrolling your phone under the covers. These may seem small, but they disrupt the timing of each phase. For example, alcohol might make you fall asleep faster, but it suppresses REM in the first half of the night, and causes fragmentation in the second half. So you sleep, but it's patchy. You wake up groggy, unfocused, or strangely emotional. That's not a hangover, that's REM rebound. Your brain missed its dream time, and it knows it. That's why protecting your sleep cycle matters. It's not just about hours. It's about structure. A night of poor sleep isn't just less sleep, it's less of the right kinds of sleep, in the right order. Think of it like baking a cake. You can't just mix the ingredients and skip the oven. Think of your brain as a master scheduler, preparing 5 to 6 loops, each with their own priorities. Early loops repair your body. Late loops refine your emotions and stitch your memories together. And somewhere inside all of that, a story. But what happens when we break that rhythm? What does disrupted sleep do to the dreaming brain? And why does the modern world make it so easy to disconnect from our natural sleep cycles? That's the question we'll explore next. So far, we've talked about stages. About N1, N2, N3, and that wild dream world called REM. But let's pause for a second and ask a bigger question. Why does this structure matter so much? Why did evolution make sleep so complicated? The short answer is, because each part of the sleep cycle does something essential. And when those parts are in balance, we function at our best, physically, emotionally, mentally. But when that balance gets thrown off, even just a little, the effects ripple through every part of our lives. Let's say you don't get enough N3 deep sleep. That's the stage that restores the body. Without it, your muscles don't fully recover. Your immune system weakens. You're more likely to get sick, feel fatigued, or have trouble focusing. Now let's flip it. Say your deep sleep is fine, but you're not getting enough REM. Without REM, your memory starts to falter. You may become emotionally sensitive. Things that wouldn't normally bother you feel overwhelming. You might forget simple tasks, or feel detached from your own feelings. There was a classic study from the 1960s where researchers deprived participants of REM sleep over several nights. The result? Anxiety went up. Irritability, paranoia, difficulty concentrating, all increased. And when participants were finally allowed to sleep normally again, their brains overcompensated, diving into longer, more intense REM sessions. This is known as REM rebound. It shows that the dreaming brain doesn't give up easily. It demands its time. And here's the fascinating part. Even if you sleep for 8 hours, you might still wake up exhausted if your sleep architecture is fragmented. That can happen if you wake up frequently, change sleep times often, or drink alcohol or caffeine too late in the day. You might go to bed at midnight and wake up at 8, but if your body skipped most of its REM cycles, you're going to feel like you barely slept. That's why good sleep is more than just quantity. It's quality plus sequence. Your brain needs the full spectrum. Like a painter needs all their colors. Like a symphony needs every instrument to show up on time. So what does this mean for dreams? It means that dreams are deeply tied to how well you sleep overall. If your REM stages are healthy and frequent, you're more likely to remember your dreams. They'll feel richer, longer, more emotionally vivid. But if your sleep is broken or shallow, your dreams may be foggy, or vanish entirely. This also explains why people under chronic stress often have intensely vivid or disturbing dreams. Their brains are using REM as an emotional outlet, trying to process fear, grief, confusion, uncertainty, through symbols, metaphors, and weird storylines. That's not dysfunction. In other words, your dreams reflect the health of your sleep, and your sleep reflects the health of your life. That's why caring for your sleep, and respecting its structure, is one of the most powerful things you can do for your mind. So tonight, before you drift off, try a few small things. Set a wind-down routine. Put your phone down, yes, even the funny cat videos. Let your body cool down a little. Sleep like a cooler room. And give yourself permission to disconnect. Not because you're weak, but because your brain has work to do. Big work. Emotional, creative, healing work. And it can't do it with notifications buzzing every few minutes. Your emotions soften. Your memory strengthens. You wake up, more you. But we're still left with a big mystery. What's really going on inside the dreaming brain? Which parts of the mind come alive during REM? Why do dreams feel so real, and yet so strange? What is the neuroscience of dreaming, behind the stories? Let's start with a twist. During REM sleep, the stage most associated with dreaming, your brain is actually almost as active as when you're awake. That sounds strange, right? You're completely unconscious. Your body is paralyzed. And yet, your brain looks like it's hosting a full-blown concert. EEG scans during REM show high-frequency, low-voltage brainwaves, just like when you're alert. It's why REM is often called paradoxical sleep. But not all parts of the brain are equally active. Some regions go into overdrive, while others go nearly offline. And that's what makes dream logic. Well, dream logic. One of the most active regions? The amygdala, the part of the brain that processes emotion, especially fear, anger, excitement, and desire. That explains why dreams are often emotionally intense. You're not just watching your dream, you're feeling it. The hippocampus also plays a role. It's the brain's memory center, responsible for storing long-term memories and pulling up old ones. In dreams, it gets creative, mixing old memories with new thoughts, stitching together people and places in ways that make no logical sense, but feel deeply familiar. That's why you might dream of a version of your high school teacher, teaching a yoga class on a cruise ship, run by your childhood dog. It's memory on shuffle mode. Then there's the occipital lobe, especially the visual cortex. This area interprets visual input, and during REM, it lights up like Times Square. Even though your eyes are closed, your brain is seeing, creating vivid imagery, colors, shapes, motion, all entirely from within. But here's the kicker. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for logic, decision-making, and impulse control, is mostly offline.
This is the Brenes editor.
It says, that doesn't make sense, or let's not say that out loud. In REM sleep,
It take a coffee break.
and that's why, in dreams, impossible things feel perfectly reasonable. Time jumps, floating,
Talking animal.
entire cities that collapse into oceans. No problem. Your internal fact-checker is asleep at the wheel. In a way, REM dreaming is like waking creativity without consequences. The emotional engine is running. The memory vault is open. The visual system is projecting full-scale hallucinations. And the logic gate? Left wide open. That's the core neuroscience of a dream. Let's imagine your dream as a short film. It has a cast, a setting, a mood.
Even.
But unlike a movie, there's no script, no camera crew, no continuity director yelling cut. So how does your brain create such vivid stories while you're fast asleep? It all starts with fragments, tiny pieces of memory, emotion, and imagination floating around your subconscious like puzzle pieces. A hallway from your childhood home, a stranger's face you passed on the street without noticing. Your brain doesn't dream up entirely new material, not usually. Instead, it borrows, samples, reconstructs. It's like a DJ mixing tracks on the fly, pulling sounds from every corner of your mental library. But look closer. The walls are the color of your grandmother's kitchen. The waitress has the voice of your old math teacher. And the menu? It's filled with inside jokes only your 12-year-old self would find funny. That's your hippocampus and neocortex at work, retrieving, distorting, and reshuffling real memories into surreal narratives. But dreams aren't just memory soup. They're stories. Often strange ones, yes, but still structured, in their own peculiar way. Some neuroscientists believe this story structure emerges from your default mode network, a set of brain regions that lights up when you're not focused on the outside world. It's the same network that's active when you're daydreaming or mind-wandering, when your attention turns inward. And REM sleep? It's like daydreaming on steroids. Except now, your sensory input is shut off. No external sounds or sights. Only your internal world, raw, unfiltered, and emotionally charged. This is where the brain starts playing director. It pulls images from memory, lines them up with emotional tone from a limbic system, sprinkles in a bit of narrative logic, or lack thereof, and hits play. What results is a dream, an experience that feels spontaneous, but is actually an expression of your brain's deepest connections. Sometimes the story reflects your current emotions, anxiety, longing, fear, excitement. Sometimes it connects dots you didn't know were related. Sometimes it just wanders, chaotic and surreal, but there's often more meaning in the randomness than we think. In one study, people who had just gone through a breakup reported dreaming of their ex, but in scenes that reflected unresolved feelings. Some chased after them. Others watched them disappear. Some confronted them in bizarre symbolic ways, like on mountaintops or underwater. These weren't just dreams. They were the brain's attempt to process something emotionally difficult, using the only language it has during sleep, symbols and story. And this doesn't only apply to heartbreak. Dreams can help people cope with grief. They can simulate future fears in safe spaces, like rehearsals. They can even present insight, however cryptic. Some researchers believe dreams are a form of active memory reorganization, a nightly reweaving of your internal narrative, who you are, what you fear, what you hope. Even dreams that seem totally absurd, flying giraffes, underwater bowling alleys, floating staircases, might serve a deeper purpose. They stretch the brain's creative muscles. They allow your neural networks to explore unfamiliar combinations. They help you imagine what if, And in doing so, they prepare you for novelty in waking life. The dream in this view isn't nonsense. It's neural jazz, improvised, emotional, beautiful, and strange, and somehow, deeply human. Close your eyes and think back to a dream that stayed with you. Not because it made sense, but because it felt like something. Maybe it left you shaken, or hopeful, or strangely peaceful. Maybe it lingered, like the aftertaste of a song you can't name. That's emotion. And it's at the very heart of dreaming. In waking life, emotions move through us quickly. We feel a flash of irritation, a spark of joy, a pang of regret. We act. We suppress. But in dreams, there's no timeline, no filter. Emotions take center stage, often stretched, exaggerated, or stripped bare. You're not just afraid, you're running through endless hallways, chased by faceless shadows. You're not just anxious, you're standing in front of your old classroom, trying to speak, but no words come out. In REM sleep, the emotional centers of the brain are wide awake. The amygdala is especially active, that almond-shaped cluster that lights up when you're scared, excited, or stressed. Same with the anterior cingulate cortex, which helps regulate how we process and resolve emotional conflict. And while your prefrontal cortex, the part that usually keeps your emotions in check, is mostly offline, the limbic system runs free. This means your feelings aren't just present in dreams. They drive the whole experience. That's why dreams often feel more real than reality. Why a nightmare can shake you hours after you wake. Why a joyful dream can lift your mood for the rest of the day, even if you barely remember it. Some researchers believe that one of the major functions of dreaming is emotional regulation. By replaying emotionally charged experiences, or simulating new ones. In this way, dreams help us work through unresolved feelings. They soften emotional intensity. They link old memories with new emotional contexts. They allow us to practice tough emotions like loss, fear, or shame, in a way that's safe and contained. A 2009 study from UC Berkeley found that people who had more REM sleep after emotionally distressing experiences showed less emotional reactivity the next day. In other words, they felt better, not because the memory was erased, but because their brain had started the process of emotional healing. There's even a theory called overnight therapy, which suggests that REM dreaming functions a bit like a nighttime therapist. Listening, replaying, letting you feel, cry, rage, love, without interruption. That's also why trauma can show up so vividly in dreams. For people with PTSD, nightmares often replay moments of intense fear or danger. Sometimes literally, sometimes symbolically. It's the brain trying, sometimes clumsily, to make sense of what it couldn't process in the moment. Dreams are not always comforting, but they are in their own way honest. And sometimes, they show us what we couldn't face when awake. A hidden joy. A memory we buried. A fear we didn't know had a name. Dreams don't just express emotions. They organize them. They give shape to the formless. They whisper what our conscious mind won't say out loud. So the next time you wake from a dream that made your heart race or your eyes well up, don't rush to explain it away. It might just be your brain speaking in its native language. By now, you've seen how strange, beautiful, and sometimes terrifying dreams can be. We've explored the architecture of sleep. We've walked through REM's inner stage. We've wandered through emotional storms and hallucinated theaters. But we're still left with the oldest, simplest question of all. For centuries, people have offered answers, some poetic, some scientific, many still incomplete. The ancient Greeks believed dreams were messages from the gods. Freud believed they were wish fulfillment, the mind's hidden desires playing dress-up. Jung believed they were mirrors of the unconscious, rich with archetypes and shadow selves. And today's neuroscientists? Well, they're still arguing. And that's okay. Some theories suggest dreams are just mental noise, the brain's way of reorganizing, clearing caches, and running maintenance scripts. Others argue that dreams help us simulate problems, test scenarios, and rehearse emotional or social dilemmas. This is called the threat simulation theory, where dreaming evolved to help us prepare for danger. There's also the memory consolidation theory, which says dreams help the brain file experiences into long-term memory, strengthening the connections that matter and pruning the ones that don't. And then there's the emotional integration model, where dreams process unresolved feelings and trauma, like overnight therapy sessions. What's amazing is that all of these might be partly true. Dreams could be multitaskers. Memory sorters, fear testers, emotion organizers, and creative boosters, all rolled into one strange nightly show. But here's a more human possibility. Maybe dreams exist not just to do something, but to remind us of something. That beneath all our logic, our language, our neatly organized thoughts, we are also creatures of image, of symbol, of emotion, of metaphor. And the dream is the only place where all of those can exist at once. freely without judgment, without explanation. In waking life, we edit ourselves constantly. We explain, filter, and reshape what we feel. But in dreams, there are no filters, only truth, wrapped in metaphor. Sometimes a dream gives you closure. Sometimes it opens a wound. Sometimes it makes no sense at all, until years later, when life finally catches up. We may never fully understand why we dream. But maybe understanding isn't the point. Maybe it's enough to know that each night, sometimes messy, sometimes magical. So the next time you wake up with fragments, don't rush to forget. Sit with it. Listen, not for answers, but for insight. Because in dreams, your mind speaks in poetry. You might just hear what it's been trying to tell you all along. You wake up from a dream, vivid, strange, emotional. That was incredible. I'll never forget this one. But then, you get up, brush your teeth, check your phone, and by the time you finish your coffee, it's gone. The entire dream, gone like vapor. Why does this happen? Why are our dreams so vivid while they're happening, yet so hard to remember once we wake? The answer is a fascinating mix of neuroscience, chemistry, and attention. Let's start with the brain. When you're awake, your prefrontal cortex, the area behind your forehead, is in charge of logic, planning, and memory encoding. It's what helps you form long-term memories, remembering faces, facts, directions, conversations. But during REM sleep, when most vivid dreaming occurs, the prefrontal cortex is largely deactivated. It's like the recording button is turned off. So even though your dream might feel intense, visual, and emotionally real, your brain isn't properly storing the memory the way it would if you were awake.
And when you wake up,
You don't just snap back online. There's a transitional period where memory encoding is still sluggish. You might know you dreamed. But unless you focus on it quickly, that fragile trace just slips away. There's also a neurochemical reason. While you sleep, the levels of certain neurotransmitters shift dramatically. One of them is norepinephrine, which plays a key role in alertness and memory formation when you're awake. During REM sleep, norepinephrine levels drop dramatically. That means your brain isn't in record mode. It's in simulation mode. And that's exactly what dreams are. Experiences not meant to be remembered like waking events, but felt deeply, processed unconsciously. Some researchers even argue that forgetting dreams is part of their purpose. That the dream's job is to do its work behind the scenes, quietly integrating emotions and reorganizing memories, without distracting you with strange symbolic images all day. But forgetting isn't always complete. Sometimes, something triggers recall hours or even days later. A smell, a sound, a flash of a dream you thought was gone. That's because dreams often get stored in implicit memory, the kind of memory that operates beneath awareness. It doesn't always form stories or language, but it can influence mood, perception, even creativity. That explains why you might wake up feeling off, slightly sad, inspired, or anxious, without knowing why. A dream may have left its fingerprint on your emotional state, even if the story is gone. And yet, some people remember their dreams vividly and often. Why? Part of it is simply habit and attention. People who wake up naturally, not to an alarm, tend to catch the tail end of REM and are more likely to recall dreams. People who care about their dreams, and take time to reflect, are more likely to keep them in memory. In other words, the more you try to remember your dreams. And that's where we'll go next, into the world of dream recall, journaling, and paying attention to the whispering voice of the subconscious. Here's a simple truth. The more attention you give your dreams, the more they give back. And one of the oldest, and still most powerful ways to do that is through something deceptively simple. But ask any experienced dream researcher, lucid dreamer, or even ancient mystic, and they'll say the same thing. If you want to remember your dreams, write them down. Not later. Not after breakfast. Immediately. There's a narrow window right after you wake, usually just a few minutes, when the dream is still accessible. Your mind is still halfway in that world. If you grab it then, even in fragments, the act of writing helps lock it in. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to make sense. You can write. Felt like high school but also the moon. Someone with blue hands. Felt anxious but also safe. That's enough. Because the brain works with association. And even small notes can help unlock deeper details later. The more consistently you record your dreams, the more vivid and detailed they become. It's like telling your brain, hey, this matters. And your brain responds by making the signal louder. Some people begin remembering full sequences, recurring symbols, dream themes that evolve over weeks, even dreams from years ago that return in new forms. Dream journaling also strengthens what neuroscientists call metacognition, the ability to reflect on your own thoughts. You become more aware not just of what you dream, But how your mind works when you're not watching. You might start to notice. Why do I always dream of staircases when I'm stressed? That hallway dream always comes back when I'm avoiding something. Why did I dream of my childhood dog right after I had that fight with my brother? These are not just random thoughts. They're patterns, clues, a kind of emotional language your subconscious is trying to speak. And when you start paying attention, the dream world starts to feel more alive. Less like something that happens to you, and more like a conversation you're actively having, even if the grammar is still mysterious. Some dream journalers even use symbols, drawings, or color codes. Others speak their dreams into a voice recorder before they're fully awake. What matters isn't the method. It's the habit, the ritual of listening, recording, and trusting that it means something. And if you do this long enough, you may notice something else happen. Wait, this isn't real.
I'm dreamer.
That moment is rare, magical, and powerful. It's called lucid dreaming. And that's where we're heading next.
Imagine this. You're in a dream. You're walking through a forest made of glass. The sky is green. Birds are flying backward. And suddenly, something clicks. You pause, look around, and say to yourself, "Wait. I'm dreaming." And just like that, the dream becomes yours. That's the essence of lucid dreaming, a rare but astonishing state where your conscious mind wakes up inside the dream. You're still asleep. Still in REM. But you're aware, and sometimes, able to influence what happens next. Want to fly? Call someone who's far away. Ask your subconscious a question. In a lucid dream, all of that becomes possible, at least for a few surreal minutes. Lucid dreaming isn't new. It's been recorded in ancient Buddhist texts, in Aristotle's writings, and even in 8th century Islamic philosophy. But for a long time, science didn't take it seriously. That changed in the late 1970s, when researchers like Keith Hearn and later Stephen LaBerge created experiments that proved lucidity was real, using rapid eye movements, REM, to send signals from inside the dream to the waking world. Here's how it worked. Before falling asleep, trained lucid dreamers agreed to move their eyes left right as soon as they became lucid in a dream. Researchers, monitoring their eye muscles in the lab, saw the pattern, proving that the dreamer was conscious while dreaming. Mind awake, body asleep. It was groundbreaking, but how does it actually happen? Lucid dreaming seems to involve a unique balance between the prefrontal cortex, the logic and self-awareness hub, and the dreaming brain. In normal REM sleep, the prefrontal cortex is quiet. But in lucid dreaming, it partially re-engages. It doesn't fully wake up, but just enough for you to gain awareness, and sometimes, control. Think of it like a theater. Usually, you're just sitting in the audience, watching the show unfold. In a lucid dream, you suddenly realize you're the director, and the stage responds to your intentions. Some people experience brief lucidity, just a few seconds of clarity before waking up. Others learn to stay in the dream longer, stabilize the scene, and explore. But even brief lucid dreams can be powerful. They can help people rehearse difficult conversations, confront fears in symbolic ways, spark creativity. Some artists and scientists claim dream inspiration. Simply experience joy, flying, breathing underwater, creating dream worlds. But lucidity doesn't mean full control. Even the best lucid dreamers describe moments when the dream slips away, the scene changes, or the subconscious takes over again. Because at the end of the day, it's still a dream. Mysterious, shifting, larger than your will, but knowing it's possible to wake up inside the dream is thrilling and empowering. And if that's something you'd like to try, the next part will show you how, with techniques, habits, and mental tools to increase your chances of experiencing lucidity. So, you want to have a lucid dream. Not just stumble into it, but actively create the conditions for it to happen. Good news, you can. Lucid dreaming isn't just a rare gift or lucky accident. It's a skill, one that can be learned, practiced, and strengthened over time. But like any skill, it takes intention, consistency, and a bit of patience. Let's walk through some of the most effective techniques. 1. Reality checks. This is the foundation of lucid dreaming practice. The idea is simple. Several times a day, you ask yourself, "Am I dreaming?" It might feel silly at first, especially when you know you're awake. But the goal is to turn that question into a habit, one so deeply ingrained that you eventually ask it in your dreams. Why does that matter? Because if you ask it in a dream, and realize something's off, that moment can trigger lucidity. Popular reality checks include looking at your hands. In dreams, they often appear distorted. Reading text, looking away, and reading it again, it usually changes. Pushing a finger into your palm, in a dream, it might go through. Looking in mirrors, often warped or unsettling in dreams. The key is to do the check mindfully, not just mechanically. Actually question reality. Could this be a dream? What's weird about this moment? The more you do this while awake, the more likely you'll do it in a dream. 2. Dream journaling. We've talked about this already, but in lucid dreaming practice, it becomes even more important. Not only does writing down your dreams improve recall, but it helps you notice recurring themes, settings, or characters. For example, if I keep dreaming about elevators or libraries, maybe next time I see one, I'll remember to question it. This awareness is fuel for lucidity. 3. The mild technique, mnemonic induction of lucid dreams. Before you fall asleep, tell yourself, mentally, firmly. Tonight, I will remember that I'm dreaming. Repeat it a few times like a mantra. Visualize yourself becoming lucid in a dream. This technique was developed by Dr. Stephen LaBerge and is often used alongside other methods. It works by planting an intention into your subconscious just before sleep, like setting a mental alarm. 4. Wake back to bed, WBTB. This technique is one of the most powerful, but it takes a little effort. Here's how it works. Set an alarm to wake up after about 5 or 6 hours of sleep. Stay awake for 15 to 30 minutes, enough to engage your conscious mind. Then go back to sleep, ideally using the mild technique as you drift off. Why does this work? Because during that second round of sleep, your body enters REM faster and more deeply. And your conscious mind is already partially activated, a perfect recipe for lucidity. Many experienced lucid dreamers say their most vivid experiences came from this approach. 5. Wake-initiated lucid dreams, wild. This is an advanced technique, and not for beginners, but it's worth mentioning. Wild involves staying mentally awake as your body falls asleep. You might start to see hypnagogic imagery, swirling lights, patterns, or sounds. If you stay relaxed and focused, you can step into a dream directly, consciously. But it takes practice, and it can sometimes lead to sleep paralysis if not handled carefully. For most people, combining dream journaling plus reality checks plus mild plus occasional WBTB is the sweet spot. And don't forget the basics. Get enough sleep. Lucid dreams are far more likely when you sleep long enough to cycle through multiple REM phases. Reduce alcohol and heavy food before bed. They interfere with dream clarity. Manage stress. An anxious mind often skips REM or produces chaotic dreams that are hard to work with. Lucid dreaming is like learning a new language. At first, everything feels confusing. But with time, effort, and attention, the dream world begins to open. And once it does, it's a place of insight, healing, and sometimes even pure joy. But as with all power, comes responsibility. And that's what we'll explore in the final part of this section, the ethics, psychology, and future of dream control. So now we know that dreams can be influenced. That with the right tools, and enough practice, we can remember them, shape them, even become fully aware inside them. But with that power comes a deeper question. Should we? At what point does exploring our inner world become manipulating it? And how far are we willing to go in the name of insight, control, or even profit? Welcome to the growing field of dream hacking. No, it's not science fiction anymore. In recent years, researchers and tech companies have begun exploring ways to interact with the dreaming brain, not just observe it, but actively influence it. Let's start with something already in use, targeted dream incubation. In one Harvard study, researchers played specific audio cues, like the word tree, to sleeping participants during the early stages of sleep. Later, many participants reported dreams featuring forests, leaves, or wood. It worked. The brain took in a cue and used it to shape dream content. That alone opens the door to huge possibilities, and some unsettling ones. Imagine being able to custom design your dreams. Want to visit a memory? Talk to a version of your younger self. Practice public speaking. Rehearse grief. Therapists are already exploring these ideas, especially for treating phobias, PTSD, or anxiety. But what if that door doesn't just stay in the therapist's office? What happens when corporations walk through it? Some marketing teams have already begun experimenting with dream influence. A few years ago, a major beer brand ran a campaign encouraging people to dream of their product, using pre-sleep videos and sound cues. It sparked backlash, and a bigger debate. Is the dream a private space? Should it be off-limits to advertising, influence, or commercial intent? Because unlike social media or TV, in dreams, we don't get to click, skip. We don't even know we're watching. There's no firewall. And that vulnerability raises real ethical concerns. Even if the tools are still primitive today, wearable sleep monitors, audio triggers, scent diffusers, the direction is clear. We're getting closer to shaping dreams from the outside. And with that comes a new frontier, one that will need rules, boundaries, and care. There's also the psychological side. Lucid dreaming, while fascinating, can be intense, even destabilizing for some people. Losing the boundary between dream and waking life can, in rare cases, trigger dissociation or sleep disruptions. So like any powerful mental tool, psychedelics, meditation, therapy, lucid dreaming requires respect. It's not a toy. It's a door. And every door you open in the mind leads somewhere. That said, the future is not all shadow and risk. There's beauty in dream exploration. Imagine guided lucid dream therapies that help people resolve long-term trauma. Or immersive dream experiences that help artists visualize ideas. Or collaborative dream research that maps the common symbols across cultures, times, and histories. We may be at the edge of discovering not just what dreams are, but what they can become. The final frontier of the mind might not be outer space, but the space we enter every night, silently, intimately, and alone. A world made of thought, of memory, of mystery. And maybe, with care, we can learn not just to observe it, but to travel through it, wisely. And now that we've explored the science, the mystery, and even the future of dreams, let's take a step back. Because while we've focused on the brain and the mind, dreams don't live in isolation. They exist inside real people, real lives, real emotions. So in part 5, we'll hear stories. Real stories, of how dreams have changed people, guided them, haunted them, saved them. It's time to go from science to soul. Are you ready? It happened to a woman in her early 30s. Let's call her Rachel. Rachel had always been healthy, no symptoms, no history of illness. Just another normal week. Work. Groceries. Dinner with friends. And then, one night, a dream. In it, she was standing in her bathroom. But something was wrong. The mirror was foggy. The lights were buzzing. And as she reached for the light switch, she noticed a sharp pain in her chest. She looked down in the dream and saw a faint red glow beneath her skin. As if something inside her was trying to get out. She woke up startled. Heart racing. The pain. Gone. It had only been a dream. But it stuck with her. The next morning, she shrugged it off. But by afternoon, the feeling returned, not pain, exactly, but a deep unease. Like her body was whispering something the dream had tried to shout. So she went to the doctor, just to be sure. They almost didn't run tests. She was young. Fit. No red flags. But she insisted. What they found shocked everyone. A small, early-stage tumor, almost invisible on the surface. No symptoms. No signs. But just in time to catch it. She had surgery a week later. Recovered. Lived. Now, Rachel doesn't claim the dream knew what was happening. She doesn't think it was magic. But she believes the dream helped her listen. Not to the stars, but to her body. To her intuition. Science calls this interoception, the ability to sense internal changes in the body. And while dreams aren't diagnostic tools, there's growing evidence that they can sometimes pick up on physical signals our waking minds ignore. Changes in heart rhythm. Tiny shifts in temperature. Pain signals too faint to notice consciously, but strong enough to echo in a dream. It's rare. But it happens. Sometimes, a dream isn't just random. Sometimes, it's a message from you. To you. And if Rachel had ignored hers, well, maybe she wouldn't be here to tell the story. Sometimes, when you're stuck, when thinking harder doesn't help, you go to sleep. And your brain keeps working. Quietly, silently, behind the scenes. One of the most famous stories in the history of science starts exactly like that. The year was 1865. The man was August Kekulé, a German chemist, brilliant but frustrated. He was trying to understand the structure of benzene, a simple molecule with puzzling behavior. He'd spent months scribbling notes, drawing diagrams, analyzing bonds. Nothing fit. Then one night, as the story goes, he nodded off in front of the fireplace. And in that dreamlike state, something strange appeared. A snake. Slithering, circling, and then, biting its own tail. The ancient image of the Ouroboros, a serpent devouring itself. A symbol of cycles. Wholeness. Infinity. He awoke with a start. And in that moment, he saw it. Benzene's structure wasn't linear. It was a ring. 6 carbon atoms forming a perfect loop. A revolutionary idea. A breakthrough born not in a lab, but in a dream. Now, was it literally the snake? Or was it Kekule's subconscious rearranging information in a way his waking mind couldn't? That's the power of dreams. They don't always deliver answers directly. Sometimes they speak in metaphor. Sometimes they just remove the clutter so the truth can finally appear. It's not just Kekule. Elias Howe dreamed of cannibals with spears, which helped him invent the modern sewing machine. Dmitri Mendeleev dreamed of the entire periodic table, all the elements falling into perfect place. Even Paul McCartney says the melody for "Yesterday" came to him in a dream. He woke up and played it on the piano, afraid he had accidentally remembered someone else's song. Modern neuroscience offers an explanation. During REM sleep, the brain enters a state of hyperassociativity, where distant ideas and memories can connect in unexpected ways. It's like shaking a box of puzzle pieces and watching two of them land together. Not by logic, but by possibility. Dreams allow for nonlinear thinking. They bypass filters. They don't care about what makes sense. And that's why they can show us something we couldn't see, even when it was right in front of us. Not every dream holds a solution. But when you're truly stuck, when your conscious brain has tried everything, sometimes the best thing you can do is sleep. Because deep inside the dream, your mind might already be working on the answer. Sometimes, dreams don't give you answers. They don't invent molecules, or warn you about your body. They just give you a moment. A moment you didn't get in waking life. And somehow, that's enough. This story comes from a man named Tom, who lost his father to a sudden heart attack. There was no warning. No last phone call. No goodbye. He told himself he was okay. Went back to work. Kept moving. But inside, he felt hollow, like a sentence that had been cut off mid-thought. And then, weeks later, it happened. In a dream, he was sitting on a bench by a lake, a place from childhood. The water was calm. The air was warm. And beside him sat his father. Not younger, not older, just him. Like nothing had ever changed. They didn't say much. Just sat together. Then his father looked over and smiled, and said, "You don't have to carry it all." And Tom woke up in tears. Not from sadness, exactly. But release. He said it felt like his body had exhaled something it had been holding for weeks. Was it real? Was it memory, or imagination? Does it matter? In grief counseling, these are called visitation dreams. They're common, especially after the loss of someone close. And no, science can't prove if they're real. But studies show they often leave the dreamer feeling comforted, calmer, and more emotionally integrated. It's as if the subconscious, that quiet, patient part of us, is finding a way to finish what couldn't be finished. Sometimes, it gives us the goodbye we never had. Sometimes, it helps us feel something we've been avoiding. Sometimes, it simply reminds us. Love doesn't vanish when life ends. It stays. Shifts form. And sometimes, shows up beside a quiet lake in a dream. That kind of healing isn't easy to explain. But it's real. And for many people, it changes everything. Art doesn't always begin with a plan. Sometimes, it begins with a dream. Not a dream of success or recognition. But a literal dream. In the middle of the night. When the conscious mind steps aside, and something older, weirder, more honest walks in. Let's talk about Salvador Dali. The mustache. The melting clocks. The surrealist madness. Dali was fascinated with dreams, not just as inspiration, but as raw material. He believed the subconscious was more interesting than reality. And that dreams held a truth deeper than waking logic. To catch his dreams, Dali used a strange trick. He'd sit in a chair holding a metal key over a plate. Just as he drifted off to sleep, the key would fall, clang, waking him up just long enough to capture the strange images he'd begun to see. Those brief flashes. A tiger leaping out of a fish's mouth. An elephant on spider legs. A clock melting under a desert sun. Became art. Other artists followed similar paths. Mary Shelley, who was just 18 when she dreamed of a scientist creating life, and awoke to write Frankenstein. Kurt Cobain, who said many of his song lyrics came from dream fragments he'd write down as soon as he woke. Christopher Nolan, who turned his fascination with layered dreams into Inception, a movie that's practically a lucid dream inside itself. There's something about dreams that bypasses the critic. The editor. The part of the brain that says, that doesn't make sense. In dreams, nonsense is sense. A hallway becomes an ocean. A face becomes a mirror. A song plays that you've never heard before, and yet somehow, you know every note. That's the mystery. Some neuroscientists believe dreams activate the brain's default mode network. A system linked to imagination, daydreaming, and creative insight. During REM sleep, this network lights up like a storm. Ideas dance. Symbols swirl. And when you wake up, if you're lucky, some of that wild magic follows you back. But you don't have to be a famous artist to be moved by dream-inspired creation. Even a sketch in a notebook. A few lines of poetry. A strange melody hummed into your phone at 3 a.m. These are dream echoes. They remind us that inside every human mind is a world. Weird, wild, and waiting. And if we listen, we can bring something back.